So you all seen what appears to be the portal to Karesh in 11.1, but literally no one is talking about this. Karesh is exactly what a successful Void Corrupted Azeroth would look like. Recent lore indicates that it also had a World Soul, just like Azeroth, that fell to the Void Lord Dimensius the All-Devouring. This means that there is literally a gigantic Void monstrosity roaming around the universe, a villain on the scale of Sargeras, if not larger, that no one is talking about. According to Chris Metzen, the Void battle in Midnight will be the biggest battle in history, the final battle of the Void, which, as you can imagine, will cause the Void to mobilize all the weapons they can get, and this guy is going to be coming after us. Also, we are going to Karesh, as a destroyed planet. Karesh is within the Void realm, which means this is the place where Void Lords can actually manifest themselves. They are said to be stronger than the Titans, just unable to manifest in the material plane, which means this might be our first interaction with a true, mind-blowing power of an actual Void Lord. So, what exactly happened to Karesh World Soul, and is this really the next big villain? If you're building a website and you need to register a domain name, there is no better option on the market than porkbun.com. The #1 domain from 2023 to 2025 as ranked by USA Today, and refreshingly different from the popular ones like GoDaddy. They've got everything from .com domains to ones like .pro, .dev, .xyz. The best thing about them though is they got the lowest prices on the market, so it is super affordable. On top of that, every domain name at Porkbun comes with a tons of freebies like SSL certificates, WHOIS privacy, DNS and URL forwarding, because why pay for something that should be free in the first place? Even better, all this is backed up by 365 days support available all the time, and more 5-star reviews on Trustpilot from real customers than anyone else. The website is also super straightforward and easy to navigate with everything in one place. So register a domain name right now with my link in the description and get $1 off and build your online identity with porkbun.com. By now you must have heard the name Karesh, especially as the World Soul Saga started, and everyone has really been talking about it recently, but prior to now, where we got what appears to be an actual portal to it, Karesh was really just an obscure lore fact you would find in some random video, like something you got from some random flavor text conversation or from an item in the game. It was like 2 lines worth of lore mentioning who the Ethereals are when they were first introduced. However, based on what they're doing in the World Soul Saga, it really does appear that Karesh is going to be more relevant than ever, and I'm talking like Argus levels of relevance, like key to the entire World Soul Saga. Everyone has been talking about the lore of this planet and how it was destroyed, but I feel like literally no one is talking about the elephant in the room, and that is what happened to the World Soul, and I feel like we're going to find that out very soon, and this will be a big look into the alternate future to set up Midnight, because if we fail this, what will remain of our planet? But even more importantly, that monstrosity could still be an active threat. I'm talking about how this guy could be their main weapon. So the known lore of Karesh is not that robust. Essentially, it was a planet somewhere in ancient history inhabited by an incredibly intelligent race. Now, keep in mind, we know them as the Ethereals right now due to them being known as these astral travelers with no body, but we don't know their actual original name. There is zero lore right now on what they used to look like and even what their original civilization looked like or how it functioned. The only thing we know is that they were super intelligent, a mage-like race similar to the Eredar. Then, one day, Dimensius the All-Devouring, one of the powerful Void Lords, decided to invade this planet. Now, this invasion was unlike any other we had personally experienced or heard about, and he bathed the planet in void energies. The Ethereals, of course, as intelligent beings well-versed in magic, resisted and formed a shield, but ultimately this is what caused the explosion and what destroyed their bodies, and this is why right now they're just balls of energy held together by magical bandages. Now, something I really want to point out though is that all this lore we currently know and that we've known since TBC, but I feel like soon a lot of holes are going to be filled in and we are going to get an actually detailed account on what happened on Karesh, which is going to prepare us for Midnight. For example, we did actually get new context for Karesh in 2 ways, just in the War Within and even a little bit before. First, Ethereals told us that Karesh started giving the same radiant song that we're getting right now from Azeroth just before the
the planet was beyond saving, and the second is that the Ethereals are apparently familiar with Xal'atath, and she is oddly familiar with them as well. Based on her reaction when they stole the artifact and when we mentioned her to them, it seems like an old grudge, like an old rivalry, like their history goes a lot more than we know. One of my theories was that Xal'atath used to be an Ethereal herself, and that she could have been one of the leading figures on Karesh that betrayed them, that sold their planet to the Void Lords. This was evident with the familiarity they have with her working with and against the Ethereals, and also bandages that she has on her body, as well as void artifacts that the Ethereals carry. However, for right now, this is just a theory that could play out, or it may not. The thing that I feel like literally no one is talking about is really the elephant in the room. Guys, seriously, Karesh is Azeroth if the Void invasion was actually successful. The hint we got in the Morothon was that it started giving the Radiant Song to the Ethereals, the same one that Azeroth is currently giving to us. Of course, we still don't know what the Radiant Song even means, whether this is the actual World Soul or the Void conversion, but we did get new lore in this expansion that told us that Azeroth has been whispering in the past, like when she corrupted and forced the Titanforge to rebel that were building a prison around her soul. So, if we go by this logic, if Karesh was giving a Radiant Song, this would mean that Karesh had a World Soul. Now, if Karesh had a World Soul and it was converted, it would mean that the Void plan succeeded and they created their own Void Titan. Of course, a lot of this is Chronicle lore, but as far as we know, the main plan of the Void isn't to just destroy the planet for the sake of causing chaos and destroying planets. It is to convert World Souls in the same way the Titans convert World Souls and create new Titans. Previously, Titans lied to us that World Souls are merely nascent Titans waiting to be awakened, but all the new lore indicates that World Souls are nascent beings of neutral energy that can be converted to either side. So, if the Void Lords wrote their own Chronicle trilogy, they would state that the World Souls are merely nascent Void Lords. The real question though is, if Karesh was converted, where is he? I mean, has Karesh been turned into a Void Lord we will soon discover, or are we going to run into him on Karesh once we actually go there, if that is where we are going, to follow that Ethereal that stole the Dark Heart at the end of 11.1. Once again, most of the lore we know about the Void Lords is based on the Chronicle and the Titan perspective, so of course we should really take things with a huge grain of salt. However, there are definitely some things that we can read between the lines and read through the Titan propaganda. Most of the recent lore has changed that we've known previously, and he stated that the World Souls are elemental and only present in some of the planets, and they seem to be neutral, so it definitely makes sense that each cosmological force wants this giant fountain of power for themselves. We also know that there are more and less powerful World Souls. For example, Azeroth is known as the most powerful one, the so-called Prime World Soul, which is why this is like prime real estate for all these big cosmological guys, but we don't really know how powerful Karesh actually is. The known lore says that the Void Lords are super powerful, but they can't manifest themselves outside of the Void plane of existence, so they sent out the powerful weapons, old gods, across the ton of different planets, and it was like just one giant shotgun, hoping something sticks, and some worlds can actually be converted. Karesh is likely one of them, and Azeroth, as we know for certain, is one of them as well. Once the old gods do their thing, the conversion happens, but it doesn't really seem like that is the only way for conversions to happen, and it is possible that they went with a different strategy on Karesh. The lore we currently know states that the Dementia surrounded the planet, started baiting it in void energies, but no lore so far confirmed any presence of the old gods on Karesh. We don't know anything about this. However, I want to state two things. We know for a fact that the void was successful, as the planet was obviously destroyed, and seeing the giant void portal and knowing how other planets work, it's likely the planet is actually within the void realm. In fact, almost certainly this is the case. Generally, where planets are blown up and destroyed, they start getting unstable and they join things like the Twisted Nether and the void realm. As this one was bathed in void, it's likely that this is the void realm. However, why this is important is because if Karesh is in the void realm, it means Void Lords can actually manifest themselves here in full power on Karesh. Now think about this. We are going to Karesh very likely, so that means we are going to very likely also encounter a Void Lord for the first time ever, as previously we had only seen tiny avatars that were like 0.1% of their power, which means this travel to Karesh is going to be absolutely crazy. Now, the Titans told us that the Void Lords want to create a Void Titan, whatever that means, but I'm not really certain if Void Lords are also born from World Souls. Seeing how that works for the Titans, it's very likely the case, but it's also possible that Void Lords can create just a powerful Void weapon that is below them in the hierarchy, but it is still incredibly deadly. The reason I find this super interesting is that no one is talking about how there is like a giant Void weapon roaming the universe, and seeing that we're going to get the so-called final Void battle on Azeroth next year, I somehow feel like this guy is going to get involved. The only other possible scenario I could think of was that the corruption of Karesh was a failure, like a scenario that didn't work for either side. There is also a possibility that the brute force that Dimensius did to blow up the planet also killed the World Soul. It didn't manage to actually convert it. That could be maybe why after the Void Lords decided to start sending old gods to do it covertly, so that the same mistake is not made again. The only big lore problem here that makes this really hard to speculate is really the timeline and how inconsistent it actually is. We never learned how long ago the destruction of Karesh happened, but some lore states that potentially the arrival of the old gods could have happened hundreds of thousands of years ago in Azeroth, which doesn't really coincide with a lot of other events that happened, and I feel like some of this lore may actually be getting retconned. However, regardless, they're going to actually develop the lore of Karesh. We had seen that portal. It is no longer going to just be flavor text, but it is going to get developed. We will learn what really happened, and it would be incredibly interesting to run into actual Karesh, the Void Monstrosity, which could be one of the main new villains we'll face off against that literally no one is talking about. Thanks for watching. Check out my video on 11.1.5 what you can data mine the return on Azoth by clicking on the screen, and subscribe to my new raid channel by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time.